Covate monti, tiene drume baie, erevdeska mati, noche lume, shoche. Ay, lule, lule, ay, lule, lule. Ay, lule, lule, mace, mace. Eu per te, eu per te, eu per te, me dà pace. E dalle pace, e dalle pace, e dalle pace, işte te. Ay, lule, lule, ay, lule, lule, ay, lule, lule, mace, mace. Eu per te, me dà pace. E dalle pace, e dalle pace, işte te. Він дивився в очі сині, тихо спершись на соснині, і слова палкі любові він до неї промовляв.
Hello, welcome to the Q&A of the documentary Town of Strangers. We are with Treasa O'Brien. She's the director of the film. Hello, Treasa.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good, considering.
Okay, so I want to start from the beginning. Your film starts with an audition at Gort. It's a town at West Ireland. And in the audition, instead of giving the people the scripts, you ask them what their stories are. And then at one point in the film, you say that the people coming to the auditions were more interesting than the characters in your script. So you decided to follow them. And I want to ask you, like, how it all began, the film, and what inspired you to leave your own film, and what kind of film was it, and then just explore these stories further.
Okay, well, I had been working on a fictional script that involved two young women that work in a chicken factory. And I had set it in the town of Gort without knowing that town so well. So I'm from Ireland and I knew the town a little bit, but I'm not from that place. And I was living in London at the time. But I found out when I started to visit Gort that the meat factory where I had set it had actually been burnt down, which happened in my script, but I was really surprised that that had actually happened. And I started to go to the town, and the script was about 25 pages long. So it was kind of a bit long for a short and a short for a feature, and I wanted to develop it. And I mainly make documentaries, but I also studied fiction and have made some short fictions. And I was very interested in what's called a hybrid film and in working with people from the town in some way to inform the script. So I was open. It wasn't a straight script to begin with, but I didn't think it would turn so documentary-ish in the end. So when I called for the auditions, I didn't do any script readings or anything. And in the auditions on the poster, I said it would be somewhere between a fiction and a documentary. And I was interested on the poster, and when I invited people to the auditions, I asked them to tell me dreams, lies, memories, and gossip. These four things for me are neither fiction nor documentary. But they're somehow, I was interested in the stories that we tell ourselves to relate our own experiences. And I also wanted to get away, I guess, from testimonial, I guess, or sort of more usual interviews in documentaries to find something more about the way that we live our experiences and our inner imaginations and how much they inform us about the way that we think about ourselves. And so in some way that idea took off from the auditions. And I actually did some, I cast the two young women who you see in the film exploring the old house. I did some work with the script with them. But actually I found it more interesting as I met people. I was trying to write them into the script, but then things were happening in their lives that were very interesting, and I started following them. And it took a long time to work out the edit structure for the film, if you like. So in some ways, the final film that you see came together in the edit more than I really knew how it would happen. But but I wanted, when I did the auditions, I had filmed them, obviously, but I was really taken with the kind of stories and the people that came to me in those auditions, and the way that they opened up to me in ways that I didn't expect. And I started to spend time with some of these people, and this it started becoming a film that started making itself, in a way, as I say in one of the radio interviews, where I'm listening to them, I'm thinking about how we might structure things. I go back to them, I say, you remember that dream you told me, or that story you told me? Maybe we try something out there. And it sort of became like a sort of a dialogue rather than a straight documentary or a straight fiction.
Okay, so you mentioned that they opened up to you. Was it that because it feels like they needed someone to tell their stories? They somehow feel lonely, some of them, and really needed to tell stories. So did they open up to you directly, or did you need to spend time with them in order for them to feel comfortable with you?
Well, what you see in the auditions, most of those people I met for the very first time. Some of them I knew a little bit. And I invited them to come to the auditions, but most of them I didn't know. But after the auditions, I then started to spend time with them. And so the things that you see after the auditions, it's I guess coming out of a time where I'm spending visiting a lot. We're not sure if we'll film, what we'll film. So I spent a lot of time, and not everybody, but some of them we became friends beyond the film, more than the relationship with the film. And so it was with each person, it was a little bit different.
Okay, so how long was the process, like from the pre-production till the end?
About 3 years, more or less.
And how long did you spend time in Gort, and how long was the editing?
So when I did those first auditions, I had spent 4 months living in Gort. And so I went there in like May or June, and then I did those auditions the first week of September. And then after that, I did a second set of auditions as well. Then I filmed some things, and then I went back and forth a lot. And so I also filmed with a lot of people that you don't meet. So, even there's a lot of people in this film, but there was actually going to be more. But the editor was like, you can't have 20 people or a 3-hour film. So good advice there. But it was very hard because I sort of fell in love with everybody, So everybody that there was probably maybe 25 or 6 people that I auditioned like that. And so there's 8 people in the end, or 9, including me, in the film. So even to bring it down to that process was through working with people, seeing what came up, what was interesting, how they worked with one another in terms of the resonances between them. And also, who worked well with the process and so on, and who wanted to continue filming and all sorts of things. So there was kind of a long process in this. And then I came back. I was living in London at the time, and I was coming back and forth from London. And I suppose a key thing through this process also is I spent time in Greece working in solidarity camps with people seeking refuge. And even though that's not directly in the film, that experience really informed a lot of my thinking around what happens after that, because that's such a huge experience for people to go through, and something we hear a lot about. But from there, what happens after that? And wanting to make, as the more that I made the film and those experiences, wanting to make something that would speak to people that are, to honor the people that are having those experiences, and also to speak to people that don't have those experiences, but to somehow create an experience where they would relate to them and not be like, oh, those poor people or those victims. So it's more about something more about the human soul Or, you know, sometimes when I tried to pitch this film at various times, I would quote William Faulkner, the writer, who was asked once why he wrote, and he said, I write to explore the human heart. And in some ways that became the film rather than the kind of larger theme around migration and so on. So, but everybody I chose in the end that's in that film have a sort of are living between two cultures or living between two lives. And I also wanted to honor the experience of what it means to long for home, rather than, there's a lot of kind of rhetoric, I guess, around assimilation and trying to get people to be like us when they move somewhere, rather than to honor their actual cultures that they have and that they're bringing with them also. And so this became sort of part of the film's theme and exploration.
Yeah, there are many sub-layers, but also it circles around the question, what is home? And you also ask them what is home for them. And then you also, I quote, you told the people you interview were the strangers, but maybe you are the stranger, and this film is about coming home. So I want to ask you, do you have an answer for the question, what is home for you, or are you still searching for an answer to that?
It's not so much that I found an answer that I'm searching, but more that the coming home is an ongoing process, rather than you weren't there and then you are there. That's maybe there's always this process that it's happening.
Yeah, and also about that the dominant, one of the dominant themes is like being a family. They are all in touch with their parents, and they also have their own issues with their parents. And these issues, we as the audience mostly learn from, they come up from their dreams. You ask them to tell you their dreams, and they tell the dreams or act the dreams. And at the beginning of this conversation, you said you told them like dreams were important to discover. So what are so significant about the dreams for you? And do you think it's the collection with the families that you when you structured the film, did you think about connecting the families with the dreams?
Okay, so there's sort of two questions in there. So the dreams, I mean, it was dreams, lies, memory, and gossip, but most people sort of told dreams, but they're sort of connected to memory as well. I've been interested for a long time in how cinema can express dreams or memories, and how in some ways the way that we recall dreams is or memories is somehow how we recall even films, and we talk about them. It was like a dream or something like this, you know. But I was also interested in how the dream could be a way of talking about something in your life, not so directly. And so it would bring up something, and it's almost like a safe place to go. It's like a safe place or an imaginary place, or it's not so much, you can sort of say, oh, it's just a dream, but also it can, you know, I was using them as a way to go deeper into something that's beyond, you know, I feel lonely, or I feel this, or, you know, something more direct, and to find the dream as a more expressive place to go. And also, not to resolve it necessarily, or not to try and interpret the dreams, or to say it means this or it means that, but to actually let those dreams be themselves somehow. And then the family thing, that definitely wasn't something I was like looking for consciously, but it came up in so many of the interviews and the auditions and the dreams and everything that was going on. And it was the editor, Miriam Strugala, who I worked with on and off for a year on this film. She really recognized that as a very key thing, and started to structure the film in a way that they would resonate with one another. So we have protagonists who are speaking about their parents, but also about their children, often where they can't be in touch with them, or that something has happened so that they're estranged in some way, either through distance or through something in life, or we don't always know. And that this longing also is connected with home and belonging and culture and migration as well.
Okay. And I also have a question that about the interview in the film. Kind of bothered me. it's really nice that you put your own radio interview to also document your creative process, because it's showing like getting the film together. But the host like keep asking questions. I felt like it's a bit bossy, a bit arrogant, and keep asking you if you're worried about completing the film, if it will ever be a film, and telling like you look so self-doubt. So I want to ask you, do you experience such behavior a lot? And do you think it's connected to like gender discrimination at the same time, because you are a women director there alone, handling most of the production by yourself, living in your van and these kind of things?
So the radio scenes are semi-fictions, if you like. So I filmed them very late in the process. And so they're set up, if you like, but still they're improvised. So they're not fully scripted, they're improvised. So it's like, you know, but the conversations and the points that I hit, if you like, in those places are based on experiences that I had that weren't filmed with, I was trying to pitch this film in various places, find a producer for it, find funding and so on. So I would go and pitch it and talk about it to people. And also I was doing a PhD at the time, and my supervisors and so on. And also my own diaries and my own self-doubt. And where does that come from? Is it really from myself, or is it from what I think people are thinking because of that? So it's a mix of all of those things. But I think there is something in that maybe is gendered in some way, because it's not necessarily that men carry it out, but it's sort of more the patriarchal system around, you know, in the documentary world, the kind of industry of the having to have the story before you make the film, as though you're making a fiction, and the kind of need for funders, producers, distributors, etc., to already know all of this very sort of 3-point structure. And a lot of films, documentary films, can work very well like that, but I feel like there can be many types, and not that we don't always have to stick with that, because it's a bit of a, you know, I feel like a square peg in a round hole when to make that. And so the film, in the end, what you see is structured in its own way, but it's not a traditional structure, and you don't get, you know, the same kind of maybe like resolution. That not everybody's story is resolved. You don't find out everything that happens from beginning, middle to end, and so on. And so this was intuitive for a long time, and in the end, I understood it as something, and I made it. I did it on purpose in the edit, but when I was making it, it was more intuitive, and I was finding my way. But there was times when I was also believing that too, that, oh my God, what am I doing, and is this the right thing, and should I do something more structured, or just follow one character and make a more observational documentary, and so on. So in a way, those conversations was a way for me to kind of put myself on the line too within the film, and also to give some clues to the audience about what's about the process, and to take you, the audience, with me on this journey of the film. So it's also like a sort of a key into the film of how to watch the film when you're watching it, if you like. So it was kind of doing many things like that. So yeah, I don't know if I kind of, yeah, if that answers your question.
Yes, of course. It shows the creative process, but also shows how you're dealing with the issues during the production. And another question about the production. You were a very small crew, right?
Yes.
In the film, but the project is executive produced by Joshua Oppenheimer. And how is he involved in the film, and how was this collaboration with him?
Okay, so on the crew part, I had a small funding from the Goethe Institute to make a short film, which is called The Blow-In, which people can also watch. It's free online. And when I made The Blow-In, it's as people know, I'm sure it's very difficult to get funding for projects. But so it was strange that somebody came to me and said, will you make this film? And so I used that money to make that film, but I did 2 extra days because I had a crew to start off the film. So it's the auditions and what you see with the two, with Chloe and Josie in the old house. So those came from that shoot, if you like. Sorry, I've lost the train of thought. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, I was also like asking how like Joshua Oppenheimer is involved and how you funded the project.
Okay, so basically, so Joshua Oppenheimer, for people who don't know listening to this, is the director of a film called The Act of Killing and many other great films. And he has come up with a whole kind of method of filmmaking that he calls documentary of the imagination. And he was also my PhD supervisor, and I made this film in tandem with my PhD. And I met Joshua when I used to be the executive director of Open City Docs Festival in London. And when he brought out Act of Killing, I invited him to show the film and to do a masterclass in London. And I got to know him there, and we stayed in touch. And one time he was like, "So what are you working on?" And I told him a little bit about what I was working on, and that I was thinking maybe of doing a PhD. And he said, "Oh, I didn't know," but he was an adjunct professor at Westminster. So anyway, I ended up getting a scholarship to do my PhD with him. So he was very, very involved from the very beginning on how to guide me through this whole process, and especially working with this idea of the documentary of the imagination, and also working with people around the kind of, there's a lot of ethics obviously involved in working with people in any documentary, but especially in this one. So we had very long discussions around that, and also around the kind of method and how I was working in terms of the process of the dreams and so on. And one thing that I was really wanted to do was to show, in a way, even though I'm showing the dreams, I'm mainly showing the making of the dreams. So I actually wrote about my film in my PhD as a making of. So usually the making of is the kind of the secondary thing you find on those DVDs or whatever. I don't know if they even make them anymore. But my film in a way is trying to show you itself as it's being made. So you see the camera, the crew, or you see the actors talking about acting, or even there's a scene with Hamid and his father that isn't necessarily acted well, but even the bad acting, not that it's not that bad, but it's like the fact that they're not professional actors is actually interesting compared to if they were acting it well or so on. And that you're seeing that and that's what you're documenting in a way. And that's sort of what for me was kind of the documentary of the imagination. So he guided me through that process and looked at a lot of rough cuts and so on as well. So he was like my PhD supervisor, executive producer, but also I suppose in some ways sometimes I call him the creative advisor as well. And he was like a good friend through it as well.
Okay. And finally, I want to ask you about what are you doing at the moment? Do you have any projects? Are you planning to finish the fiction that you were working on in this film, or any other projects are you working on?
Well, I actually started collecting COVID dreams. So it's kind of pertinent to the film. So it was a little bit accidental at the beginning of this. A few friends of mine were telling me their dreams. And I asked them if they would send them to me by voice message on WhatsApp. And then I started to put some music so Irene Buckley, who composed a lot of music for Town of Strangers, she was supposed to be like the main composer, but in the end, I chose a lot of other music that I felt worked well with the characters, other kind of like pop music and so on. And so a lot of the music that she composed wasn't used in the film. So I'm actually using that music now and putting it with the voice of the dreams. And some of them are very simple. It's like just music with a voice on it. And then some of them I'm looping, and because one of them is a recurring dream, for example. And those are going out in a show that was supposed to show The Blow-In, which is the short film connected to Town of Strangers, in the Glucksman Gallery. And so they had a show that I was supposed to be in called Home, that was cancelled because of the pandemic. So they decided to do Home from Home, which is online at the moment. And they're putting the artists on every few days. And so my dreams, or they're not my dreams, the dreams that I'm working on are going online on the 29th of May. And again, that's kind of interesting because it's a very collaborative process. So there's Irene's music, other people's dreams, and then I'm like almost the kind of creative producer putting them together and kind of looking after them or curating them in a way. And it's also interesting for me because I was going to put visuals with them, and I just decided actually that to lie down and close your eyes and just listen to these dreams is the way I want them. So their sound works. And it's interesting for me to get away from visual representation for a change as well.
Yeah, very interesting, and also very interesting that you're experiencing with the footage, with new ways of storytelling and new ways of like audiovisual things.
Yeah.
So okay.
Oh, I just want to say, sorry, one more thing on that, if that's all right. The other thing that I'm working on is I'm in a group called Shli Ella, which is the Irish for Another Way, which is a climate action group, an anti-capitalist climate group. And so we've started a reading group that is looking at capitalism, COVID-19 and climate change, and looking at how all of these things are related and trying to find somewhere in them how the narrative, the kind of opportunity for a narrative there that could be changed or used towards anti-capitalism and climate change. And so that's a kind of another thing, I suppose, that I'm kind of really thinking about and involved with. That's kind of more directly political, I guess, even though I see these dreams and this film as political, but it's not in the more direct way that these other things that I do are.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so thank you so much for Town of Strangers and also for this nice Q&A, and looking forward to your future projects. Very nice meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sezen, and thank you everybody for watching today.
Bye.